All right, let me be absolutely clear about what we are witnessing here. We are potentially days, not weeks, not months, but actual days away from watching a sitting British Prime Minister resign in absolute disgrace over a scandal so devastating that it makes every previous political implosion look like a minor administrative hiccup. The pressure on Keir Starmer has reached levels that are simply unsustainable. We are talking about a man who is reportedly spending sleepless nights in Downing Street, who is losing the support of his own cabinet members by the hour, who is facing rebellions from his parliamentary party, who is watching his approval ratings crater to historically unprecedented lows, and who knows, absolutely knows, that the Peter Mandelson scandal is about to deliver a coup de grace that no amount of spin or deflection can survive. Senior party figures are having conversations about succession planning. Close allies are quietly distancing themselves. The resignation letter might already be drafted and sitting in a drawer, waiting for the moment when clinging on becomes more damaging than stepping down. This is not speculation anymore. This is political reality unfolding at breakneck speed, and we might be witnessing history in the making. If you want to be here the moment Starmer's resignation becomes official, if you want to catch every second of this spectacular political collapse as it happens, hit that subscribe button and smash notifications right now, because when this breaks, it is going to break fast, and you cannot afford to miss it. So, let us talk about the pressure that is building to absolutely unbearable levels, because this is not your standard political difficulty that a prime minister weathers and moves on from. This is existential crisis territory. The Mandelson scandal has metastasized from being a serious problem into being a terminal condition, and every day brings new revelations that make Starmer's position more untenable. Just in the past 48 hours, we have had leaks suggesting that Starmer knew far more about Mandelson's problematic connections than he has admitted publicly. We have had reports of cabinet ministers expressing serious concerns about whether they can continue to serve under his leadership. We have had backbench MPs openly calling for his resignation in media interviews rather than through the usual private channels. The dam is breaking and the flood is coming. The specific trigger for resignation could come from multiple directions, which is what makes this situation so volatile and unpredictable. It could be the release of documents that prove beyond any doubt that Starmer deliberately misled Parliament about what he knew and when he knew it. Misleading Parliament is traditionally a resigning matter, one of the few absolute rules in British politics that even the most shameless politicians usually respect. If those documents come out and they show clear evidence of deception, Starmer would be under immediate and overwhelming pressure to resign, and that pressure would come from his own party as much as from the opposition. Alternatively, the trigger could be a delegation of senior cabinet ministers going to Starmer and essentially telling him the game is up, that he has lost their confidence and the confidence of the parliamentary party, and that he needs to go before he is pushed. This is how Margaret Thatcher was removed. This is how Theresa May was forced out. And this could very well be how Starmer's premiership ends. When your own cabinet turns on you and makes it clear you cannot continue, when the people who are supposed to be your closest political allies essentially stage an intervention, you are done. And all the signs suggest we are approaching that moment, with cabinet members making increasingly pointed comments about the need for ethical leadership and transparent governance, code language that everyone understands as criticism of Starmer. There is also the possibility of a formal vote of no confidence, either from the opposition or potentially even from within his own party. While Labour's rules make it somewhat difficult to trigger a leadership challenge, they are not impossible, and if enough MPs decide that Starmer has become an electoral liability who will drag them all down, they will find a way to remove him. The numbers are brutal right now. Polling suggests that Labour could lose significant ground in upcoming elections if Starmer remains leader, which gives every Labour MP with a marginal seat a powerful personal incentive to support a change of leadership before their own careers are destroyed. The conversations happening behind closed doors in Westminster right now must be absolutely extraordinary. You've got senior labor figures wargaming different scenarios, trying to figure out how to manage a leadership transition in a way that minimizes damage to the party. You've got potential successors being sounded out about whether they would be willing to step up if Starmer falls. You've got party officials planning for leadership election logistics just in case. You've got spin doctors preparing messaging for various contingencies. The entire Labour Party apparatus is essentially preparing for a post-Starmer world, while Starmer himself is still technically in charge, which is about as damning an assessment of his prospects as you could possibly imagine. What makes the resignation scenario particularly likely in the coming days is the confluence of multiple deadlines and pressure points all hitting simultaneously. There are crucial parliamentary votes coming up that Starmer might not be able to win, which would be hugely embarrassing and would intensify calls for his departure. There are scheduled media appearances that he is going to struggle to get through without facing devastating questions about the Mandelson scandal. There are party meetings where discontent could boil over into open rebellion. And crucially, there are the impending documents releases that could contain information so damaging that resignation becomes the only viable option. The media is already in resignation watch mode, with political editors essentially camping out in Westminster, waiting for the announcement. Every major news organization has prepared packages ready to go the moment Starmer resigns, with analysis of what went wrong, profiles of potential successors, and historical context about prime ministerial resignations. The machinery is in place, everyone is positioned, and all that's missing is the actual event itself. This state of high alert cannot be sustained indefinitely, which suggests that resolution, one way or another, is imminent. Peter Mandelson himself has become toxic to the point where even being associated with him is politically damaging. Cabinet ministers are refusing to defend his appointment in interviews. Labour MPs are calling for him to be removed from his position. The public polling on the Mandelson appointment is catastrophically negative, with overwhelming majorities saying it was wrong and that it raises serious questions about Starmer's judgment. Mandelson has gone from being the Prince of Darkness, who was supposed to bring political savvy and experience, to being an albatross around Starmer's neck, dragging him down to political oblivion. And the tragedy for Starmer is that removing Mandelson now wouldn't solve the problem, because the damage is already done, and removing him would just look like a catastrophic error. The international dimension continues to add pressure as well. Foreign governments are reportedly expressing concerns about the stability of the British government and about whether commitments can be relied upon given the political turmoil. There have been diplomatic incidents where Britain's position has been undermined because Starmer lacks the political capital to make credible commitments. Our allies want clarity about who is actually in charge and whether that person will still be in charge next week. And right now, nobody can give them that clarity. This is not just embarrassing, it has real implications for British interests and British influence in the world. The economic pressures are mounting too. Markets dislike uncertainty, and a prime minister who might resign at any moment creates exactly the kind of uncertainty that makes investors nervous. We have seen some concerning movements in currency and bond markets that suggest people are pricing in British political instability. Business leaders are expressing frustration that they can't get decisions from a government that is consumed by internal crisis. The longer this drags on, the more economic damage accumulates, which creates yet another reason for Starmer to go sooner than later. What's particularly striking is how isolated Starmer has become. In previous political crises, you'd see loyal allies mounting vigorous defenses, friendly media outlets running supportive pieces, party grandees rallying to provide cover. None of that is happening now. The defenses of Starmer are half-hearted at best, the media coverage is uniformly negative even from typically sympathetic sources, and the party grandees are either silent or subtly positioning themselves for the succession. When a political leader becomes that isolated, when nobody is willing to expend political capital defending them, the end is very near. The comparison to previous prime ministerial resignations is instructive. Tony Blair faced enormous pressure over Iraq, but ultimately left on his own timeline. Gordon Brown was pushed out after electoral defeat.
David Cameron resigned immediately after losing the Brexit referendum. Theresa May was forced out after losing control of her party over Brexit. Boris Johnson was driven from office by a cascade of scandals and ministerial resignations. Each of these departures had their own unique circumstances, but they all shared a common thread. The Prime Minister reached a point where continuing was more damaging than leaving. Starmer is rapidly approaching that point, if he has not already passed it. The psychological pressure on Starmer himself must be immense. This is a man who spent his entire career building toward the premiership, who finally achieved his ambition of becoming Prime Minister, and who is now watching that achievement turn to ashes because of catastrophically poor judgment. The stress of knowing that you are likely to be remembered as one of the shortest-serving and least successful prime ministers in British history, that your legacy will be defined by scandal and failure rather than achievement, that must be crushing. Some political observers suggest that resignation might actually be a relief, a way to escape from an untenable situation that just keeps getting worse. There are also personal considerations that might influence the timing. If Starmer is going to resign anyway, there are better and worse ways to do it. Resigning before being forced out allows you to retain some dignity and control the narrative to some degree. Waiting to be pushed means a more humiliating